Hi, I'm John Morgan. Welcome to Where Should I Ski, the podcast. Today we're going to go to the Arlberg in Austria, the cradle of modern skiing, home to Hannes Schneider, considered the father of modern skiing, one of the most beautiful ski experiences I've ever encountered. We're talking today with Barney Caddick, senior guide and owner of Ski Like a Pro in St. Anton. I found Barney online when I was looking for a guide for my family, and since then, my whole family's had some great adventures together with Barney. A little bit on Barney, and I'm sure he'll tell us more in a little while. Barney's been working as a ski guide in Anton for 27 years. He's got some huge certifications, which in Austria is hard to do. It's like getting a master's in skiing. And he's been teaching for 36 seasons in 8 different places, schools on 4 continents. Barney, it's great to talk, and thanks for joining me today. 8 ski schools in 27 years. Wow. What brought you to the Arlberg region and the St. Anton?
Thanks, John. First of all, thank you so much for organising this podcast, and I really appreciate talking about the Arlberg with you. I started skiing when I was very young. We had big summer holidays in Australia when the winter was on in Europe. So I used to do my university, and in the holidays, I'd be able to come over to Tyrol, to Austria, and teach. So for me, it was a great escape. And the first few years, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just too young. And I started actually over around Kitzbühel, which is much lower altitude. And eventually, I just had this list of ski schools, and I just went down the list, and I happened to call the ski school in St. Anton, and they said, "Yep, come right over." And before I know it, I was in St. Anton. I was only 20. I didn't have a clue. And I just happened to choose quite a special place. And it just stuck, just kept going.
The Arlberg is a special place. You touched on it there, and it sounds like that's how you ended up there, is because it just sort of stuck to you. It's huge region. It's got, 5 towns and regions in it? It's listed as one of the world's top skiing resorts in terms of skiing and après ski. And in terms of the skiing, at least, I totally agree with that. The official stats have it, it's pretty varied. The official stats have it 43% beginner slopes, 41% intermediate, and 16 for advanced. It's got 94 lifts and almost 200 kilometers of off-piste. It's huge, bigger than anything in the U.S., I think. Those are the official stats. But tell us about the Arlberg. You see it every day, and you live.
I do. The problem with these official stats is all the ski resorts around the world are trying to have 33% beginner, 33% intermediate, 33% advanced, and so to say we cater for everyone. Unfortunately, the Arlberg is a whole mountain range. So if you can imagine Whistler Mountain, Blackcomb Mountain, and then you add another 20 of those mountains with that sort of vertical, and you put it all together on one lift ticket. That is the Arlberg. So it's just this massive interconnected mountain range. Unfortunately, with these resorts, the shape of the mountains can't be changed. And the Arlberg is generally a little bit steeper and a little bit narrower in the valleys than a lot of these other resorts. You can head out to Deer Valley and you're cruising the blues and you're the king on earth. The Arlberg doesn't have that sort of terrain. We just have, even our easy runs have really tough bits in them. But for the experienced skier who loves their skiing, it's a really interesting place to ski. It's a real challenge.
It is, and there are some places up toward Zurs and Lech where it's not quite so bad. You can go out and you can, as an intermediate can ski it. When you
Correct.
When you start going town to town, when you go town to town, you're going to run into stuff.
Absolutely, and that's why people generally get a guide, and the guide knows where to be at what time of the day, to be in the sun, to be on the nice soft snow, to avoid the crowds. And there are ways through this. It's like being in New York, and if you go down the wrong street at the wrong time, you're stuck in traffic. So anyway, but that's why I have a job there. That's why we're needed. planai, where it's all this one big open plain, you can self-navigate. You don't need it. 3 valleys in France, you can half work out where you are. Not a chance in the Arlberg.
Well, and there's a lot of, you're going from town to town, and there's some really cool towns in the process. So you're not just skiing one hill. You're going, you have a lot of choice in where you're going. With a lot of snow, you can go down to Steuben. You can ski to St. Christoph very quickly and easily from St. Anton. You can ski all the way to Zurs and Lech and back.
Correct.
It's a long day, but you can ski a lot of terrain.
There is. And the off-piste is probably what the Arlberg's famous for, actually. Our off-piste skiing, once you get away from the piste and you're skiing these big fields of powder snow, and then you're away from the crowds, then you get it. Then you're like, wow, now I get what the Arlberg is about. Now I realize why it's so famous. If you want proper downhill racing slopes, Kitzbühel in January is hard to beat. Some of these other areas are really, fantastic, but the Arlberg is you're really out in the wild. I mean, you're talking about a massive national park, untouched.
Well, and I'm going to sort of go somewhere. We've never had a chance to ski the Valluga together because it's been closed most times early in the season. It opens up later, and I usually come early. Tell us, what's like taking people up and down that?
Okay, so Valluga you can only do with a registered guide who's written on the list. You have to be pre-approved as a guide to be allowed to take guests up there. And the problem is that the top part of the Valluga is heavily exposed. The north face, there's this ice. In German, they're called a Platte. So there's a layer of ice that everyone has to ski over, and there's no guarantee that it won't slide. And occasionally, every few years, the whole thing goes with skiers on it, and the skiers die. So that's the problem with the Valluga, the north face. It happened about 6 or 7 years ago. They had this German mountain guide with 4 guests, and the whole thing slid. And I think, I don't know, there were 2 or 3 deaths. The guide survived, and a couple of guests got taken over the cliffs, and that was it. And that's just bad luck. And that's why it's revered. But actually, once you've skied this top, I'd say 200 meters, then you have the most beautiful run of your life in this back valley that goes for about 5 kilometers of powder skiing all the way down to Zurs. And it's a famous run. They've taken all the, lots of famous European royal families, whatever, famous people have skied this run. They've all had photos with their guides. And it's just one of these classic Arlberg things. But there is a way around all this. You can also ski the west face from the top of the Valluga. And the west doesn't have this problem with this hanging snow. So you can just step down over the rocks, and then you can ski out. And it's also a beautiful run. Fantastic.
So you just ski around the rock. Basically, you ski around the face, and then you come out into the big open bowl.
And you're safe. Well, if something slides, there's no cliffs. The problem with the north face, which is the revered one, the first set of cliffs is about 40 meters vertical. And then the second set's about 50 meters vertical.
That's why you need an experienced guide.
Absolutely.
And that makes, you have to do that.
I must have done it at least 200 times with guests, the Valluga North.
And you've never lost a guest yet.
No, but people freeze up. You know what it's like. And once you start heading down, you can't climb back up. It's too steep. So it's like, you get these people that, they break down on you and they're like, call a helicopter. And you're like, well, that's great. But, we're here right now. The helicopter's not going to get you from right here, and you're not injured. And just, keep stepping down, and you just got to talk them through it. And you step down, you're not spending half an hour doing something that should take 2 minutes. And then you keep on skiing on. But I've learned to match what the guest is wanting with the terrain. I've learned through getting it wrong. I've taken the wrong people down the Valluga. And I've learned now not to do it with that sort of person. And then you've got people that want it. And they're the people that want it are ready for it, mentally. And then they just ski it and get on with it. And it's a great run,
All right. Now that we've scared everyone, what would be your go-to day for, let's say, an advanced skier?
Okay. So it's all weather dependent. And when it last snowed. So if you've got fresh snow, you don't have to be that clever because you can often ski in every direction. But let's say it's the fourth day after a snowfall, and on the last 2 days it's been too warm in the afternoon and the snow's gotten a bit crusty. Then all of a sudden the direction you ski is really important. So you want to be sort of skiing that northern sector for powder. Mm-hmm. So we have lots of options. We have for northern skiing, we try and do often hikes up in the sun where you ski down in the shade in the north. And, Rendell is right there in St. Anton. It's St. Anton's little secret. It's this part of the Arlberg that's not attached to any other part of the Arlberg. So it's much quieter than the other busy areas. So Rendell's the quick, if you just want to get straight into the powder and not muck around, that's a good option. But we also have these wonderful day tours. We end up skiing to Stüben, down to Langen. You can come back on the train, for example. Or we have these day trips where you keep going north. So you do the Valluga, then in Zurs, you ski Madloch down to Zug, then you keep skiing all the way almost to the German border. You do these big tours, just all these big famous north faces. Then you come back through Lech and back home. So there's really endless options. It's quite. That
sounds spectacular. Some of those long tours, and we've skied Rendell a fair amount. Rendell, just for everyone on the podcast, is across the valley essentially from the main mountain of St. Anton. So it gets different sun, different light, and the snow conditions are vastly different.
That's correct. The main St. Anton side is called the Lech Tal mountain range, and the Rendell side is a completely different mountain range called the Favs Valley mountain range. So it's a completely different group of mountains, and that changes the type of snow and the type of skiing. It's interesting.
It also changes the shape of the hill too, which is interesting.
Absolutely.
Now, not everyone's going to want to go down the Valluga or be advanced who's going over there. What about intermediates? Is there skiing for intermediates?
Absolutely. We have absolutely out of this world skiing for intermediates. There's a big difference between a complete beginner and what I'd call someone who's on their third or fourth day skiing, and you're trying to get off these complete flat beginner slopes, and you're trying to go to the next. That's difficult in St. Anton for particular reasons because of the shape of the mountains. But someone who's skied a few weeks, they've done their 10, 15 days of skiing, they can get around. Then now you're talking. That lets us get up high on these big open bowls, and we've got this beautiful highways of fantastic skiing. And what we also have in the Arlberg these days is we have the option to download at the end of the day. So instead of skiing down the icy bumps down into St. Anton with the crowd, we can stay up in the sun, ski on the beautiful groomed piece up the top, and then once we've had enough, right at the end of the day, 4 p.m. we can catch the lift down, and it's a great day. So we have some good options, and then we can wake up the next day and head over to Lech and Zurs and spend a day skiing over there. And then wake up the next day and go to Sonnenkopf, Stüben. We have all these different options.
I've never made it down to Stüben, but ski the other ones. Now that we're on to Lech and Zurs, let's talk about the White Ring. It's one of the more famous runs or series of runs in that area.
So the White Ring is the idea of the White Ring is that you follow the sun through the course of the day. So you start the day skiing the east-facing slopes in Zurs, and as the sun starts to head round as the day goes on, you follow the sun round, you start skiing the southern faces in Lech, where you end up having a break, lunch in the afternoon, and then at the end of the day, you ski the west faces in the sun all the way back to Zurs. So that's called the White Ring, the idea that you follow the sun all day, and for most of the time, 95% of the time, you're skiing in the sun. And it's a natural, it's a perfect ski tour. And not only that, it's because it uses about 10 different lifts that never repeat. You have a beautiful tour of the mountains, quite spectacular.
It is.
And that's for intermediate skiers.
I've done it a few times. I've got some stories about the White Ring too, but I think I've told you those. So another thing I've run into in Anton is every morning you hear the avalanche guns going off, and some days it's snowed so much that they shut most of the mountain down. It's mostly for visibility and for safety. They're pretty safe
Correct.
over there, and they take the safety very seriously, but it also holds up some of the ability to get to powder. Is that, what do you do when it
That's
snows
true.
like that?
Okay, it's quite intimidating if you're not used to it, hearing all the cannons in the morning, because they really echo in the valleys. And not only that, they're coming out, you're not ready for it. You hear this huge bang, and then there's a 5-second delay, and then you hear the echo of the snow sliding. And you hear it going down these gullies, and that echo comes out in the village, and you're like, oh, then everyone heads into the sports shops, goes and buys an airbag, and do you know what I mean? Or maybe I will get a helmet, do you know what I mean? Or a strap on a peeps. So it helps the sport shops anyway. But what they're basically doing in these storms is they're shutting down the skiing above the tree line where you don't have good visibility. So they're shutting down the upper mountain, but you can ski the lower mountain in the trees. Now, once again, if you're going off piste in St. Anton, you really are better off taking a guide, and the guide will provide you with avalanche safety equipment. And then even then you'll go the normal routes, the normal way, and you ski in the forests. And really the guest coming on a holiday with a guide is pretty safe, not much, and even then we take the safety side very seriously, and we brief our guests and we explain everything.
That's good.
We have fantastic skiing in the forest when there's fresh snow. We have fantastic options.
What's your own favorite day in skiing in the Arlberg? When you get to ski without guests and by yourself, what's your favorite day?
I love ski touring with skins. So you put the skins on the skis, and then you hike up to a mountain cross, and then you sit up there, you eat a little sandwich, and you take a couple of photos, and then you ski down a different face into a different valley. So you hike up one valley up to the cross, and then you ski down another valley back down. And most of these tours, they end up taking a full day. So you can only do one mountain peak in a day. So maybe some of the tours take 3.5, 4 hours of hiking to get up to the cross. And then the vertical is so enormous. It's often 2,000 vertical meters back down to the valley, and it ends up taking 2 hours to ski down and hike out. And that awesome. For me is beautiful. We've probably, just in the Arlberg alone, we've probably got 40 or 50 big ski tours like that. And it's quite a challenge to ski them all, to say you've done all the big mountain peaks in the vicinity. It's quite fun. But that's nice for me because I'm always in contact with guests when I'm working. I'm doing all the normal tours. So a day off for me is not skiing something I could do with a guest.
Fair enough.
So on a day off, I'm trying to do something.
Maybe talk a little bit about what it's like in the Arlberg, with the restaurants and the nightlife.
So St. Anton has famous origins with après-ski. They're credited with pioneering the very first après-ski in Europe, and that's through the Crazy Kangaroo, and to some extent the Morsevit. These are these two very famous après-ski bars. These days it's quite commercialized, and I'd say what it used to be is different. In the old days you had this coming together of all these international people, and that made it really, really special. Whereas these days it's everyone's just on shorter trips, and our generations have moved on, John, haven't we? Not to say we can't enjoy it, but the young kids are in there, and they're there for real. Do you know what I mean? They're
you see some of them going wild, at 2 a.m, and they drag themselves out at 7 a.m. and start getting on the lift.
You got it. But you'd be surprised how many meet their future wife in après-ski. You would be staggered if you knew the statistics. I mean, people just they get drunk, they let it go, and they all have fun.
There are also some pretty spectacular restaurants around. You and I have been to a couple up on the hill, and you can ski and have a late lunch and have a delightful lunch, as opposed to getting in the U.S. you'd get a $20 burger and a Coke and be stuck in a cafeteria. And you're sitting out looking at some of the most beautiful scenery and halfway up a mountain.
The Arlberg's got a way of making you feel special. So they make every table in a restaurant have some special feature, some special view, special table, special seats. And even then the waiter or waitress dresses in traditional clothing. They're very polite. These days, there's no issue with talking English. Everyone just gets on with it. And then they present the food. It's well done. It's done on they're proud. They're proud people. They believe in what they're doing. And this is all part of the Arlberg experience. So we can, particularly in bad weather, you can be unlucky and you turn up there and it's just too windy, or it's I don't know, some reason it was sunny in the morning, then it clouds over and it's all flat light. And then you can pop into one of these restaurants and it just gives you that boost. And you have a fabulous lunch and a beautiful view out the window and you think, gee, this is fantastic. And so we've got enough special places, enough special restaurants that every day is different.
That makes it, you're right, it makes it well worth it. And if you finish the day and you end up in a town, you've got some special places to go to. And so it works out really well. Well, how do people find you? What's the best way to get a hold of you? And I know you've got a website, and we'll plug that in a sec.
But I don't self-promote whatsoever. I get a lot of referrals. So I've got several, I actually get a lot of East Coast and Quebec Canadians. I have people that ski with me and they pass on to their friends and that fills in. And then you also just get fanatics like yourself turning up in St. Anton and they're going through the internet and they read through and read about. So while I do have a website and all that, I'm not busy trying to promote it. I'm waiting for the keen skiers, the diehard skiers, and I can really give them a good time. I can give them exactly what they're looking for. They come to me and they say they want to do this, this, and this, and I can give it to them.
Well, and you have a pretty good philosophy about how you guide and how you instruct while you're guiding.
The Arlberg is so massive that you can't spend the whole day on a run. What I'm saying is the terrain will teach you how to ski in the Arlberg. The runs are so long that our vertical is so massive. And we're trying not to overteach in the Arlberg. I've picked this up from the Tyroleans. The best skiers in the world, in my opinion, are the Tyroleans. They've got the greatest knowledge. And you'll find you're lucky if you get a mumble or a grunt out of these Tyroleans. They'll just keep skiing. And then at some point, if you're really doing something wrong for long enough, they'll mumble, do you know what I mean? They'll be like, get your hands forward or whatever. They'll be like, come on, get on that left foot. And you won't hear anything else the rest of the day. They're just but if you pick up what they tried to tell you and actually do it, like, oh, hang on, that worked. And do you know what I mean? And whereas if you're in Australia and you get your 2-hour lesson on some busy run where you're queuing at the lift and you're standing around all day and they're hammering you on technique, I don't know, it's a different philosophy. But it suits that terrain in Australia. It's not that they're wrong in Australia. I'm just saying in St. Anton we have different. It's huge. It's massive.
Well, it is, and everyone learns a lot by following you when they're skiing.
Correct.
And you learn more from that, and learn how to handle the different terrain than anything else. Barney, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. Hopefully,
Cheers,
some
John.
of your insights will get to a lot of people out here, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Just before I go, I will plug my website for anyone who's fanatical about it. If you want to get in contact with me, my website is skilikeapro.com. And my name's Barney Caddick, so you can even try typing that into Google. And thank you so much, John, for having this chat today. And it's really nice to talk about St. Anton with you. Cheers.